The royal palace of the Varelian Empire stood tall and silent under the cold silver sky, its glass towers reflecting the pale morning sun like frozen tears. Usually birds with crystal feathers flew around the palace gardens, and the sound of soft music floated in the air. But today, everything was too quiet, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Queen Seraphine Virelia, ruler of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, stood motionless in the throne hall, her silver eyes wide with disbelief and fear. Her long dark blue cloak touched the marble floor as guards kneeled before her, their faces pale. The words they spoke felt like knives piercing her heart. "Your Majesty, the young princes are gone." For a moment, Seraphine could not breathe. Her younger twin brothers, Prince Leor and Prince Kair, only 6 years old, filled with laughter and soft smiles, were missing. They were her only family left. After the brutal war against the human race took their parents, she had raised them like a mother, protecting them from every threat, every shadow. She had promised them safety, and now they had disappeared without a trace. The guards explained in shaking voices, no broken windows, no forced doors, no signs of struggle. Their small beds were cold, their soft silver blankets left neatly folded. It was as if they had simply vanished into the night. Seraphine's heart pounded painfully inside her chest. Her hands trembled, but her voice remained firm as she gave her command. "Lock the palace gates. Search every corner. Find my brothers." Her voice echoed through the empty halls like thunder. Servants ran. Soldiers spread across the palace like a wave of silver armor. Every room, every garden, every hidden passage was searched, but no footprints, no clues, nothing was found. Rumors began spreading like fire across the empire. Some whispered it was the work of rebels. Others blamed human spies seeking revenge for the war. In distant cities, frightened citizens closed their doors and prayed. The disappearance of the princes was not just a family tragedy. It was a storm that could destroy peace across planets. Seraphine stood alone in the prince's room, her fingers brushing the soft toys lying on their beds, the wooden star Leor loved to hold while sleeping, the little cloth bird Kair hugged when he was scared. She sank to her knees, her cold, queenly mask cracking as tears filled her eyes. She remembered how, just last night, the twins had run into her chamber, laughing and asking for bedtime stories. Leor had climbed into her lap and said, "Sister, promise you'll never leave us." She had smiled and kissed their small foreheads. "Never," she had whispered. And now they were gone. A deep silence filled the room, and for the first time since she became queen, Seraphine felt helpless, not as a ruler, but as a sister whose heart was breaking. The galaxy outside did not rest. Ships moved like silver arrows, carrying the queen's orders to every planet under her rule. Scanner drones were deployed into forests, abandoned ruins, mountain caves, and even towards the quiet blue planet known as Earth. The Royal Council begged her to stay calm, to think logically, to avoid blaming humans without proof. But Seraphine's voice was sharp like a blade. Every passing moment could mean their suffering. "I will not sit and wait while my brothers are in danger." Her anger was not wild, it was cold, controlled, and filled with grief. She would burn the stars themselves if it meant bringing them home. Outside the palace windows, dark storm clouds gathered. Soldiers prepared warships, their engines roaring across the sky. Across alien markets and human colonies, people whispered in fear. The queen was ready to start a war. But behind her powerful armor and crown, Seraphine was simply a sister, broken and afraid. She walked into the empty throne room, where 2 small chairs stood beside her throne, made just for the princes so they could feel close to her during meetings. Now those chairs looked painfully empty. She touched them softly as if they might still be warm. Her voice, barely more than a whisper, escaped her lips. "Leor, Kair, where are you?" And in that quiet moment, the great queen of the Varelian Empire stood alone in a universe that suddenly felt too big, too cold, and too silent without the laughter of the 2 boys she loved more than anything. Days passed like slow-moving shadows, heavy with fear and unanswered questions. The palace lights never dimmed. Soldiers did not sleep. Queen Seraphine stood in the war chamber, surrounded by holographic maps of planets and blinking red markers, showing every search unit across the galaxy. Each hour that passed without news felt like another crack in her heart. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were red from sleepless nights. "Expand the search to outer colonies," she ordered. "Search human territories. No place is too small. No door remains unopened. Her generals bowed and obeyed, but even they felt the weight of her sorrow. Everyone knew, if the princes were not found soon, war would come, and it would be a war without mercy. In distant towns and villages, posters with the young princes' faces were displayed. News screens showed their silver hair and bright blue eyes, asking for any information. Some cried for the lost children. Others trembled at the thought of the queen's wrath. On planets once touched by war against humans, people whispered that maybe this was revenge. On human worlds, fear grew. Some believed the humans had taken the princes. Others believed they were innocent. But no one knew the truth. Even the stars seemed silent. Seraphine would spend hours in the boys' empty room, touching their pillows, whispering their names like a prayer. Lior, Kair, come back to me. One rainy evening, a small sound broke the endless silence. Beep. It came from the far side of the war table, an incoming signal. It was faint, almost too weak to notice. The generals paused. Seraphine turned sharply, her heart racing. The signal came from an old tracking device sewn secretly into the prince's clothes. It was designed only for emergencies, and now, after days of silence, it was active. But what shocked everyone was the location. Not a military base, not an enemy ship, not even a known rebel hideout. It came from a quiet green planet at the edge of human space. Earth. The coordinates pointed to a small countryside village far from any city, far from any war, a peaceful place with farms, forests, and rivers. It was the last place anyone expected royal princes to be. The council begged the queen to wait and send a diplomatic team. But Seraphine's voice was ice. Prepare my ship. I will go myself. Her guards hesitated. Your Majesty, it could be a trap. She looked at them with tired, burning eyes. If it is a trap, then I will walk into it. My brothers are there. There was no arguing with her. Within an hour, her ship, black and silver like a falling star, pierced the clouds and soared into the dark sky. The journey to Earth was silent. Seraphine stood by the window watching stars rush past. In her hand, she held a small necklace, 2 silver rings attached together, the last birthday gift she gave to the twins. Memories of them laughing, running in palace gardens, calling her name, filled her heart with pain. She whispered, "Please be alive." Below the ship, Earth slowly came into view. Blue oceans, green lands, white clouds. A calm planet untouched by galactic power. The ship landed quietly in a field of tall grass, surrounded by fireflies and moonlight. No soldiers marched. No weapons were raised. Seraphine stepped out, dressed not in royal jewels but in a simple dark cloak. Only 6 royal guards followed her. The signal led them down a dirt path past trees and wooden fences to a small farmhouse with warm yellow lights glowing from inside. A dog barked in the distance. The air smelled of rain and soil. Seraphine's heart beat fast, hope and fear mixing inside her. She stood at the door, her hand trembling as she reached out. What would she find inside? Her brothers crying? Injured or worse? She pushed the door gently. It creaked open, and what she saw inside made her freeze where she stood, unable to breathe. Her guards gasped softly behind her. The scene was not of danger or pain. It was something no one in the galaxy could have imagined. Her lost brothers were there, but not in chains, not in fear. They were asleep, peacefully, on a human's chest. Queen Seraphine stood frozen in the doorway of the small farmhouse. Her breath caught in her throat as her silver eyes widened at the sight before her. The room was dim and warm, lit only by the soft glow of a fireplace. On an old couch near the fire, a young human man lay asleep, his arms loosely around 2 small figures resting peacefully on his chest. Prince Lior and Prince Kair, her lost brothers, were curled up against him, their small bodies wrapped in thick wool blankets. Lior's head rested on the human's shoulder, his silver hair covering part of his soft cheeks, while Kair snuggled closer, holding onto the human's shirt with his tiny fingers as if it was the safest place in the universe. Their faces were calm, no fear, no pain, only gentle breaths and quiet dreams. The human's clothes were worn, his hair messy from sleep, and his hands looked rough like someone used to hard work. Yet the way he held the boys was gentle, protective, almost like an older brother would. Seraphine's guards immediately placed their hands on their weapons, ready to strike. But she raised her hand sharply, silently, ordering them to stop. Her heart did not see an enemy, only a strange and impossible peace. She stepped inside slowly, her footsteps light as if she feared waking the children. The air smelled of firewood, warm milk, and something sweet, perhaps honey. On the small table beside the couch were two empty bowls, a pot of soup, and a pair of tiny shoes still wet from rain. A soft quilt was draped over them, and someone had carefully tucked it around the boys to keep them warm. Seraphine felt her throat tighten. These were not the actions of a cruel captor. These were the actions of someone who cared. For a moment she did not feel like a queen. She felt like a sister watching her brothers sleep safe for the first time in days. The human shifted slightly, unaware of the queen's presence. His face was young, maybe no more than 20. Tired but peaceful. On the floor beside him lay a wooden star, half-carved, with small hands trying to engrave designs on it. Perhaps a gift for the princes. Her heart softened, but her mind was still alert. She approached closer until she stood right beside the couch. She could hear their soft breaths. She could see dried tear marks on the boy's cheeks, the kind that only come after fear has passed. Just then, Lior stirred. His eyelashes fluttered, and he slowly opened his eyes, blue like clear water. He looked up and saw her, his sister, the queen he adored. For a moment his eyes widened in surprise, then in relief. "Sister?" he whispered, his voice weak with sleep. He gently shook Kaer awake. Kaer blinked confused, then when he saw Seraphine, tears of happiness filled his eyes. He tried to sit up, but his small arms still clung to the human. Seraphine knelt beside them, her hands shaking as she touched their faces, making sure they were real, alive, safe. "You're safe. You're safe," she whispered, pressing her forehead against theirs. But her moment of peace shattered when she remembered the human. Her guard instincts returned. She stood up and turned toward him, eyes cold once more. As if sensing the change, the human finally woke up. His eyes opened slowly, and he saw royal guards, sharp weapons, and the queen standing inches away from him. Fear flashed in his eyes, but he did not move. He carefully raised his hands, his voice quiet. "Please, don't scare them." The guards pressed their weapons forward, but Seraphine spoke first, her voice sharp like a blade. "Who are you? What have you done to my brothers?" The human swallowed nervously, but did not stutter. "My name is Eli. I didn't take them. I found them in the forest. Cold, hungry, crying. I just took care of them." Lior grabbed her sleeve and whispered, "Sister, he's telling the truth. Eli helped us. Please don't hurt him." Seraphine looked at the human again, this time not as a queen, but as an elder sister. Pain, confusion, and relief mixed inside her. This human was not a kidnapper. He was a protector. The room felt quieter. The fire crackled softly, and in that simple farmhouse, something stronger than fear began to grow. Trust. The quiet warmth of the farmhouse suddenly felt heavy as tension filled the room, like a storm preparing to break. Eli, the young human, slowly sat up, careful not to wake the princes fully, even though they were already rubbing their sleepy eyes and clinging to his sleeves in fear of being separated. Seraphine, the alien queen, stood tall before him, her royal cloak flowing behind her like a dark shadow, her silver eyes sharp with anger and confusion. The guards surrounded Eli, their spears pointed toward his chest, ready to strike with a single command. The fire crackled in the silence, throwing flickers of orange light over everyone. Eli's voice was soft but steady as he raised his hands higher. "I didn't harm them. I swear." Seraphine's voice cut through the air like ice. "Then explain why my brothers are in your home, sleeping on your chest as if you are family." Her words trembled slightly, not just with anger, but with fear. She had imagined the worst for days. Her brothers captured, hurt, crying. Yet now they were safe, but in the arms of a human, one of the very species she had learned to distrust after the war. Lior stepped forward, tugging her hand gently. His small voice broke the tense silence. "Sister, don't be angry. Eli saved us." Kaer nodded, hiding half behind Eli's arm. "He gave us food and told us stories when we were scared of thunder." Their innocent words fell like soft rain on Seraphine's hardened heart. Still, the queen's eyes did not fully soften. Her duty as a ruler battled with her love as a sister. She took a deep breath and asked again, her voice lower but firm, "Tell me everything." Eli looked into her eyes, not with defiance but with honest calm. 3 nights ago I was walking near the forest to gather wood. I heard crying. I followed the sound and found them, wet from the rain, shivering, hiding under a tree. They were scared. I didn't know who they were, not at first. They didn't tell me their names. He glanced gently at the boys. They just kept asking if I could help them find warmth. The guards listened silently, waiting for the Queen's command. Eli continued, "So I brought them here. I gave them soup, dry clothes, and let them sleep by the fire. When they got fevers, I stayed awake and took care of them. The next morning, they told me they were princes." He gave a small, nervous smile. "I didn't believe them. I thought it was just a story made up by two scared kids." Seraphine noticed the wooden toys on the table, the small half-carved star and bird. She remembered how Eli must have carved them to make the children smile. Her heart ached. She looked at her brothers. Their eyes were red but full of trust as they clung to Eli's shirt. They were not scared of him. They were scared of losing him. One of the guards stepped forward. "Your Majesty, this human should be taken for questioning. We cannot trust his words." Seraphine raised her hand, silencing him. She stepped closer to Eli, so close he could see the reflection of the fire in her silver eyes. "If you are lying, I will know," she said quietly. Eli nodded, not moving away. "I understand." For a long moment no one spoke. Only the soft breaths of the princes filled the room. Lior finally broke the silence. He walked to Seraphine and placed her hand over his heart. "We are safe because of him. Please don't take him away." Kyre hugged Eli's arm tighter. "He sang to us when we cried." Seraphine's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She slowly lowered her hand from her sword. The anger in her heart cooled, replaced by something softer and heavier. Thankfulness and guilt. She realized she had been preparing for war, blaming humans while one human was holding her family together. She took a deep breath and spoke, her voice low but no longer sharp. "Very well. We will stay here until the boys are ready to return home. You, Eli, will not be harmed. But know this, I will be watching." Eli nodded, relief washing over his tired face. The guard stepped back, though still cautious. Seraphine looked around the warm little home. The quilt, the soup pot, the hand-carved star, and something within her shifted. For the first time in days, her heart felt a little less empty. The princes smiled, their tiny hands holding both their sister and the human who kept them safe. And in that simple farmhouse, a fragile bridge formed between fear and trust, between alien royalty and a human heart. The rain tapped gently on the farmhouse windows the next morning, filling the room with the soft rhythm of falling drops. The fire had burned low, casting only a faint golden glow across the wooden floor. Prince Lior and Prince Kyre sat at the small table, wrapped in warm blankets, their hands cupped around steaming mugs of milk. Queen Seraphine stood behind them, her eyes watching every move Eli made as he quietly prepared breakfast. The silence was heavy, not angry but fragile, like a glass that might break with one wrong word. Finally, Seraphine spoke, her voice calm but still carrying the weight of a queen. "Tell me how you left the palace." The twins exchanged nervous glances. Lior lowered his eyes and whispered, "It was our fault. No one took us." Seraphine's breath caught. She had imagined kidnappers, enemies, traps, but not this. Kyre's voice trembled as he continued, We just wanted to see the star gardens at night. We thought we could come back before morning. But we lost the path. The forest was dark, and then it started raining. Tears slipped down his cheeks as memory returned. Cold nights, hunger, thunder that felt like monsters roaring in the sky. Lior's hands shook as he clutched his wooden star. "We called your name, but no one heard us. We thought you would be angry, so we hid." Seraphine knelt beside them, her royal armor forgotten as a sister's heart broke. "You are children. You should never have been afraid to come to me." Her voice cracked as she pulled them gently into her arms. The twins cried softly into her shoulders, repeating, "We're sorry. We're sorry." She held them close, tears finally falling from her own eyes. For days she had blamed the world, blamed humans, blamed war, but never imagined the truth lay in the innocent mistake of two frightened children. Eli stood quietly near the stove, his hands frozen mid-motion as he watched the scene. He did not speak, did not move, only listened with sad understanding. He had heard their cries on the first night, the way they whispered apologies in their sleep. It broke his heart then, and it broke again now. When Seraphine finally stood wiping her tears, she looked at Eli, not with anger but with a strange kind of softness. "You cared for them when I could not," she said quietly. Eli shook his head. "They were just lost boys. I only did what any decent person would." But Seraphine knew better. Not everyone would shelter alien children at the risk of their life. Not everyone would stay awake through storms to soothe nightmares that were not their own. She glanced around the small home. The boys' wet clothes had been washed and folded. The scratches on their hands had been cleaned and bandaged. 2 small drawings lay on the table, childish drawings of the farmhouse, the fireplace, Eli, and them smiling. No palace servant had ever earned such trust from the twins. Only this simple human. The princes, now calmer, began telling stories. How Eli sang them lullabies from his world, how he carved toys when they were sad, how he cooked sweet berry pancakes to make them smile. Kair tugged Seraphine's sleeve and whispered, "He never shouted at us, not even once." Leor looked up at Eli with bright eyes. "He told us no one is ever truly lost as long as someone is looking for them." Seraphine felt something warm and painful rise in her chest. Guilt, gratitude, and something like hope. She walked to Eli, her steps slow, and said softly, "I judged your kind too quickly." Eli looked surprised. "After the war, I understand." But Seraphine shook her head. "Understanding pain does not give permission to spread it." Her voice lowered even more. "You saved them. For that you have my eternal gratitude." The guards in the corner shifted uncomfortably, unused to hearing their queen speak with humility. Outside, the rain finally stopped, and a pale sunlight touched the windows. The farmhouse felt different, lighter, safer, like a heavy door had finally opened. The princes finished their milk and sleepily leaned against Eli's arms again, as if it was the most natural place for them to rest. Seraphine watched, and for the first time in many years a small, genuine smile touched her lips. In that humble room, far from palaces and battles, truth had been spoken, tears had fallen, and hearts had begun to heal. And unknown to them all, this small beginning would change the fate of 2 worlds forever. The farmhouse had grown quiet in the afternoon sun, the warm light spilling across the wooden floor and the small kitchen table, where the twins had left their half-eaten snacks, their laughter echoing softly from earlier play. Queen Seraphine stood near the doorway, her arms crossed but her eyes soft, watching her younger brothers interact with Eli in ways that made her chest ache with relief and awe. Leor was sitting cross-legged on the floor, showing Eli a small wooden toy he had been carving with shaky hands, while Kair leaned against Eli's chest, humming a quiet tune he had learned from the human the night before. The princes laughed easily now, a sound so rare and pure that Seraphine felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She had spent weeks preparing for war, imagining the worst, picturing the children in chains, terrified, lost in human territory. But here they were, alive, laughing, safe, and already forming a bond with the very human she had feared. Eli looked tired, his shirt damp with sweat from carrying the boys earlier, but his smile never faltered. Every gesture, every word he spoke was patient, gentle, and full of care. He let them play, let them explore, let them rest against him without complaint or hesitation, as if the weight of their tiny bodies was a treasure rather than a burden. Seraphine moved closer, noticing the small details. The way Eli had fixed a broken toy with scraps of wood, the way he had built a little fort with cushions for the boys to hide in, the careful way he fed them and reminded them to drink water. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. This human, who by all rights should have been a stranger, had become the protector, the comfort, the anchor for her brothers in a way she had not thought possible. Kair yawned and rested his head fully on Eli's chest, his tiny hands clutching the human's shirt as though letting go would mean falling into danger. Leor crawled up beside him, leaning against Eli's arm, and the human's rough hands instinctively brushed the boy's hair, smoothing it gently, whispering soft words to calm them. Seraphine could feel her heart swelling, realizing that for the first time since their parents' deaths, her brothers were experiencing safety and love without fear. They were learning that the universe was not only made of battles, crowns, and cold metal. It was also made of warmth, kindness, and trust, and it was this human who had shown them that truth. She watched Eli's face closely, noting the slight shadows beneath his eyes from sleepless nights. Yet in his expression there was no resentment, no expectation of reward, only care, commitment, and an unwavering calm that made Seraphine feel a strange mixture of humility and admiration. She had always believed her empire, her army, her power were the ultimate forces in the galaxy, but here, in a quiet farmhouse, she was witnessing something even stronger. The quiet, steadfast courage of humanity, of one man who had risked everything simply to help 2 children. Hours passed, and the twins grew sleepy once again, curling closer to Eli as he gently rocked them in his arms. Lior's small hand traced the lines on Eli's shirt while Kyre nuzzled into his neck, whispering soft words that Seraphine could not fully understand, but that clearly held gratitude and trust. The queen knelt beside them, placing her hands lightly on her brother's shoulders, feeling their warmth and the steady rise and fall of their chests against Eli's. A strange feeling filled her, relief, and a quiet recognition that perhaps this human had taught her something no army, no ship, no weapon ever could. Love and courage were not measured by power, but by sacrifice, patience, and the ability to care when it mattered most. For the first time in weeks, Seraphine allowed herself to relax, to breathe, to smile. She could see in their faces, in the gentle curve of Eli's lips as he hummed a soft tune to calm them, that her brothers had found more than safety. They had found a friend, a protector, a heart strong enough to hold them when the world seemed too big and cold. And in that moment, Seraphine made a silent promise. When the time came to return home, when the palace awaited them with its walls of silver and its halls of power, she would never forget this human, this quiet, ordinary man who had done the extraordinary by showing her brothers that even in a vast and dangerous galaxy, kindness could be the greatest power of all. The first rays of sunlight spilled across the farmhouse, painting the walls golden and filling the small room with warmth that seemed to push away the shadows of fear and uncertainty that had lingered there for days. Queen Seraphine stood at the doorway, her silver eyes soft but alert, watching her younger brothers stretch and yawn, their tiny faces glowing with the innocence that had been preserved through storms, fear, and cold nights. Lior rubbed his eyes and looked up at her, a bright smile spreading across his face as he saw the human, Eli, still seated on the floor, brushing crumbs from a small wooden toy he had carved for them. Kyre crawled onto Eli's lap, wrapping his arms tightly around the human's neck, and whispered something that made Eli smile, his tired eyes lighting up with affection. Seraphine felt a warmth in her chest she had not known since before the war, the warmth of relief, gratitude, and quiet hope. The twins were safe, happy, and alive, and they were safe because of this human, who had given them warmth, protection, and care without ever asking for reward or recognition. She walked into the room, her royal cloak brushing softly against the wooden floor, and knelt beside the boys. "You are ready to return home," she said gently, though her voice carried a weight of emotion that made Eli glance up, uncertain. Lior shook his head and clutched Eli's shirt. "We don't want to leave him yet," he said softly. Kyre added, "Please, he stays with us." Seraphine looked from the twins to Eli, her heart torn between duty and gratitude, and for the first time, she allowed herself to see the truth. Family could be found in the most unexpected places. Eli, feeling the weight of her gaze, smiled shyly. I don't need a palace. I just want them to be safe and happy," he said quietly. Seraphine's lips curved into a small, genuine smile, the first in many days. She knew that this man had done what no army, no spy, and no weapon could do. He had shown her brothers trust, love, and courage through simple human actions. She motioned for the guards to stand down, and for a moment the room felt peaceful, filled only with the soft sounds of laughter, breathing, and quiet morning life. The twins climbed onto her lap one by one, still holding Eli's hands, their small fingers entwined with his. Seraphine could feel the connection they shared, a bridge of trust and love that had grown over days of fear and tenderness. It was more powerful than any declaration of loyalty, more enduring than any oath or crown. And she knew deep in her heart that this moment, this fragile, precious bond, would forever change how she saw humans and their capacity for goodness. After a long pause, she spoke again, her voice steady but gentle. "Eli, you have risked your life to care for my brothers. I cannot repay this with gifts or titles. But know this, the Varelian Empire will never see humanity as a threat, at least not because of your actions. You have proven that courage and compassion exist even in the smallest hearts." Eli blinked in surprise, shaking his head. "I only did what I had to. Anyone with a heart would have done the same." But Seraphine knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "No, not anyone. Few would have. You have saved my family. You have saved my brothers. That is worth more than any treasure in the